Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? We got another episode of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast for you here. So Kevin and Angel, and we have our client Vanessa joining us for the second time. Vanessa did a client success interview coming up on probably about a year ago in a couple more months or something like that. So this will be really cool to kind of check in. So Vanessa, we're going to kind of cover a really interesting topic, something that you had brought up earlier today, and that's being that you are in Florida and there's a lot of military around you, a lot of military families. There's a lot of people who are kind of concerned with the shutdown, and you've been able to kind of continue to sell throughout that process. And I know there's people probably listening to this who are struggling with that. I know it's impacted some of our other clients. So do you mind kind of just like talking about what it's been like locally for you recently and kind of how you've navigated that whole thing?
Yeah, so I have several military bases here, but also just government in general. And I've had probably 5 or 6 consultations in the last couple of weeks where I've had people have concerns about whether or not they can even afford dog training with the shutdown. And I hear where they're coming from. They're not sure when their next paycheck's going to be. So part of what I do is allow people to make payments. And so I offer them ways to feel secure in being able to make a payment and break it up so it's a little bit more manageable.
Very cool.
Then listen to them first, because you got to empathize and understand where they're coming from. So I think that's really important, first and foremost.
Yeah, and just to touch on that too, you have had somebody in the past not pay, right? So the reason I bring that up is just like using that as the example is because I think that a lot of people, their first gut reaction when they hear about payment plans and stuff like that is, well, what if somebody doesn't pay? And it's just an interesting thing because so many times people leave so much money on the table because of one bad actor. Like you have one person over the years, or maybe it didn't even happen to you. Maybe it happened to one of your dog trainer friends where somebody didn't pay them and you're like, I'm just not going to touch that. I'm not going to do that. People need to pay me, the whole thing at drop off for the board and train, or they need to do half up front and halfway through the program, or they're not getting their dog back and stuff like that. So I just want to touch on that real quick because you could have in that moment when somebody decided not to pay you or just said, hey, I actually fell on hard times. I don't have the money. I can't pay. You didn't let that you didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater with that, so to speak, and to say like the whole thing doesn't work. You were just kind of like, okay, it's one person. I'll try and do the best I can to collect on it and, keep working through that. But I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face and just say like I'm throwing the whole thing out because it does make a lot of money and a lot of sense to help people get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually had one person not pay me, and then I've had one person pay me and then take their money back. So that was fun. But I've been doing this for 12 years, and I feel like 2 people in 12 years, it's a pretty good track record. So I feel like it's not something that really threw me. Yes, it upset me. And I actually, when that client didn't pay me, I was in a place where I needed that money. It's kind of like, really need this money. But instead of wasting my time and energy on that one person, I put my energy towards beast mode, as
Yes,
you
as
know
you
me
call it.
as. So that was kind of my thing. But I also feel like one person doesn't define your business or define how other people will also be. And I'm also more particular now about who I take on as clients. I can read people fairly well, and I know most people mean well, and people do fall on hard times. We all do. And so I think sometimes having empathy and compassion also makes a difference.
Exactly right. And yeah, I just want to say this, and then Angel, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. But you just hit the nail on the head when you were like 12 years of doing it and 2 people who didn't pay. A lot of times people just make an emotional gut decision on the spot, and they're just so frustrated and pissed that somebody just didn't pay them the 3, 4, 5 grand or whatever. And they're like, screw this. I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore. And then they just completely, they cut their business off at the knees because they are no longer able to as effectively sell people into their programs because they are requiring too much cash up front to get started. And yeah, I just think you have to chalk it up to the cost of doing business. Like, okay, someone didn't pay. It's really annoying, but it's like there's a lot of stuff like that in business, like somebody doesn't show up to a consultation, right? It's like, okay, that's annoying, but it doesn't mean that consultations don't work, right?
Right.
You just kind of have
Yeah.
to just unemotionally detach from that gut reaction you're having in that moment of getting stiffed or, getting ghosted or something like that, and just being like, all right, well, holistically, this has helped me make hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I'm not going to stop doing it now just because somebody, was a little bit of a jerk about it. But Angel, with that being said, like, what are your thoughts on that? What have you seen with other clients on this?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's just the cost of doing business, offering those types of payment plans or really any type of payment plans, even if it's like a third party financing company, you're still running that risk of someone deciding like, oh, I'm going to dispute these charges or I'm just going to stop paying or I'm going to stop showing up or whatever it is. Like you're running that risk. But the reality is like not every client that you're going to take on is going to be one of those people or like a bad person who is going to decide to just stiff you. But I mean, you're doing what has to be done in this season of your business. And I love that. And we actually had one of our group coaching calls a few days ago. We had a client on there, a really good client, and he was kind of talking about, and then also just getting into the holidays. And I can't remember what he said word for word, but it was basically, he pointed out how people will say, like, oh, I'm doing bad right now because, like, no one wants to buy because it's the holidays or, kind of making excuses in a way. But he was like, this is just a reality. This is like, just a seasonal part of business. And so I know that I have to change my ways, So the way that
Yeah.
you're going to sell in, let's say, for example, June and July is not going to be the same exact way that you're going to sell in November and December or literally any other time of the month. Or it's not going to be the same way that you're selling during an election year versus a government shutdown. So it's really important to recognize that, like, as a business owner, you still have to take accountability. And regardless of what's going on everywhere else, like, you still have to make those changes to figure out, like, how you can make it work for everyone.
100%. So Vanessa, another thing that you kind of come up against is people just saying things to you like, I can't do this right now because of like the fear of not getting paid or something like that because of the government shutdown. So how do you go about handling that? And that, because that's an objection, right? And I'm sure that's come up with people.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you kind of go about like being sensitive to that and just kind of helping people work through that kind of feeling and fear?
I think part of it depends on how much problems are they having with their dog. So if the problems are really high, the objections are a little bit easier to overcome because I let people know these problems are not going to go away. They're going to persist and they're probably going to escalate and fairly quickly. I try and give people enough room to breathe financially as much as I can while also not hurting me financially and business wise. So I think some of that depends on the level of like how fast they need to get their dog in for training. I also give people a little bit of an out. What I have started doing, because I'm trying to close while I'm sitting there with people. So I take a deposit to hold their spots. What I have started doing is allowing people, say I want to book, they're going to book for November 30th. And 2 weeks prior to November 30th, they're like, I really, really can't do this right now. I will push them out no more than 2 months and then they lose their deposit. I think giving them that little bit of breathing room allows them to feel more secure about putting that deposit down, which is better than me not giving them breathing room and them just saying, no, I can't do this. I'll call you in a few months when things are better. If someone has a deposit down, they're more apt to actually hold on to that spot, even if I have to push it out a month.
Yeah, what I always think about is just how can you make it as reasonable and affordable for people as possible. If it's not reasonable and affordable, they will not do it.
And all of this kind of comes back to your offer as well. Alex Hormozy wrote that book, $100 million Offers, and that's a part of it. It's like, if your offer has all these amazing things packed into it, hey, you get one-on-one sessions before and after your board and train, and we're guaranteeing results, and you'll have lifetime support. But oh, by the way, in order for you to get started, you need to pay me $5,000 today. Sorry, you can't do it. It's like, that offer is not that good. So like the
No.
way that you break up the payments, the way that you make it more digestible to people is a big part of the offer, and it's going to be a big part of your success when it comes to selling.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% because I can offer all the beautiful things in the world, and people are like, yes, sign me up today. I would love to do this. And then if I were to drop that big bombshell on them, they're going to be like, well, as much as I would love to, I'm not in a place to do that right now. And I'm not going to push somebody off and hope that I get them in a year just because I wasn't willing to kind of work with them. I feel like there's a lot of give and take, just like in dog training. You can't shove a dog through training and expect them to retain any information. Just like I'm not going to shove a client through something and expect them to actually work with me. If I'm not willing to work with them, they're not going to work with me. I think it's important.
Exactly. So two things. The first being that 70% of Americans don't have $1,000 sitting in their checking account at any
Right.
given moment. That's the number one thing to always think about whenever you're like, why is nobody buying? Everyone's like a price shopper. It's like, yeah, well, it's just a math equation, and you're cutting 70 people out right out the gate, because you're saying I need $2,500 to get you started, so like that is just the first thing. The second thing is treat people the way that you would want to be treated. If you really wanted your dog to be trained and you didn't have the money, or let's use a different example. Your engine in your car goes out and you really need to get it fixed. And you're like, I need this car to go to work every single day. I need to be able to take my kids to school. And the mechanic's like, yeah, I don't really care. It's $4,000. Like, pay it or don't pay it. Like, that's the only thing that matters to me. You'd be like, I got to find a new mechanic. I got to find another way to do this. And so if he were to say, hey, I hear you, and we have different options, like, why don't we do this? Are you good for the money? Can we like agree that you'll actually pay this? Is there a high level of confidence that you're going to be able to swing this? And if all the boxes were checked and you were like, yes, I can do this, and they went out of their way to help you, we're like, we're going to get your car back up and running. We know how important it is that you get your kids to school, that you can keep going to work and stuff like that. You'd be like, this is the greatest mechanic in the world. First off, I'm going to refer everybody to them. And second off, like, they just treated me like a human being with like dignity and respect. And they found a way to kind of like help me get started. And so I just think that when you run your own business, I understand that it's easy to get jaded, and maybe you get burned once and you're like, I'm just not doing that again, and I need to have all the money up front. But yeah, you just end up cutting so many people out. And some of our best clients that we have today, like, I helped them get started in the beginning. Like, I found a way to like piece it together on different cards, and there was an aunt that was going to Venmo me some money to help pay for it, and we're changing out cards, in the beginning to make it work and stuff like that. And like, they've been with us for years, and they're like some of our favorite people. And so just because somebody doesn't have, does this sound familiar? And just because like somebody doesn't have all the money up front, people have done that for me too, and I'm like eternally grateful to those people. And so just because someone doesn't have the money up front doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good client and they're not going to help the business grow. So Angel, I mean, I know that you had a story about this too. We're just kind of like the person who was able to kind of help you get started, nurture you and stuff like that, because you weren't able to pull the trigger during your initial consultation, like a year later being able to get your dog trained.
Yeah. So before my training career, when I put my dogs through a board and train, it was an interesting process. Like, I'm going to tell a little bit of the beginning part before I started with the trainer I went with, because I think it is very helpful. I called a company, and I was one of those people where I just called and I'm like, hey, how much to get my dog trained? Like, I didn't ask any questions. I didn't like ask about any certain level of obedience I was looking for. I didn't tell them my issues. So prime example, people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to ask. And again, I was one of those people. How much does it cost to get my dog trained? And this guy answered by saying it starts at about $500. And I wasn't sure what to expect cost wise. So when I heard $500, I'm like, holy shit, this guy's on crack. Not getting my dog trained by
$500. Oh my goodness.
$500 freaking dollars. So I called the next company and same thing. How much to get my dog trained? She couldn't give me pricing over the phone. She right away was telling me, like, we need to schedule a consultation. I need to get a better idea of what's going on, what you're looking for. I want to be able to meet your dogs, kind of see where they're at right now, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty sure there was that conversation of, like, well, can you give me a ballpark kind of thing? And she was good at not doing that, scheduling the consultation. And so she comes out and does her whole spiel. I get the prices, which were a lot more than $500.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like $4,000 to $5,000 because this was like 14 years ago. So prices were a bit cheaper then, but it was definitely over 2,000. But yeah, the consultation went great. She like really sold me on it, but I didn't buy right then and there. And yeah, so I was like, we'll be in touch. And for the next probably like 6 months, we stayed in contact. We talked often. And I would just like message her, like, "Oh, could this potentially be something we could work on? Could this be something we could work on? Blah, blah, blah." And she would like message me to check in and stuff like that.
You were a
And then
nightmare client. I'm just
I
gonna say it
was,
right now.
no, I
You're
was
like a nightmare
actually,
lead.
I was actually a nightmare because I'm pretty sure I cried in the consultation.
Oh
But it's because
gosh.
I was so stressed out with my dogs.
Yeah.
And yeah, she later on I actually ended up doing an internship through that company, and she did tell
Wow.
me that I was a nightmare client and that she thought it was weird that I started crying. And I was like, yeah, me too. But anyways,
Yeah, that's because it was weird, but whatever.
yeah,
I mean,
it
I
was.
make clients cry all the time, so I'm used to it.
Yeah.
In a good way. Like you're not like abusive to them and like,
No, no,
maybe you
no.
are.
Oh gosh, no, no. I'm just super empathetic, and apparently, I just open up the floodgates and allow people a safe space so they can cry
Yeah.
about their dog.
I
Yeah,
love that
totally.
though. But yeah, I ended up putting both of my dogs through a board and train later on. I think like a year later, I went through like an internship with them, worked for a few different companies. 14 years later, here I am. So it was
Heck
worth
yeah.
it. But saying all that to say,
hmm
when someone asks for pricing on the phone, like regardless of the number you give them, they're going to get scared away because they don't know what to expect. They don't know what
Yep.
questions to ask. Even after you do the consult, nurture the heck out of them because I was nurtured like a little baby broken
Baby.
bird and I signed up and here I
Yeah.
am.
Crazy follow-up sequence, just like
Oh yeah.
nurturing the hell out of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
And
want
then
to
you
say
made
real
a
quick,
career
like,
out of it. Oh, sorry.
I did. Yeah.
I was just gonna say real quick, that whole thing of like starts at 500. If you're gonna say starts at, you better give like a really good compelling number that doesn't scare people off. Because saying starts at 500 or starts at 1,000 just reads as like this shit's about to be expensive. Like if it's
Yeah.
starting there, that's your lowest possible price. It's like, okay, what am I actually gonna be paying? So,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, like we tell people all the time too, right? Like when someone looks for you on Google, it's because they are looking for training, regardless if like you think they would be a good client or you think they're ready or they're committed, like they are looking for training. They have an issue. And so when you end up losing them, like they're still looking for training. They're just going somewhere else. And that was the case. I thought someone was on crack for telling me that training was $500 and I ended up paying multiple thousands of dollars with someone else who just had a very like strict process with getting me started and making sure that I saw the value in what I was going to be paying for and all of that. And I
Yeah.
ended up falling in love with it.
Yeah, and Vanessa, I remember conversations that you and I have had in the past, and I've done this many times myself, where you rush the sale because you think it's like, oh, this is going to be an easy lay down sale, and you're like, they're giving me all the signs on the phone call of like they're just going to sign up, they're asking all the right questions, we have a really good connection, we're laughing, and then you give the price, and they're like, oh, that sounds amazing, yeah, I'll call you back, I'll let you know when we're ready to get started. I just got to talk to my husband. And you just kick yourself every time because you're like, I know that if I met with you face to face, you would have bought from me. And I've done
Yep.
that with Top Dog advertising too, where I'm like, this person's a referral. This is so easy. They're just like their friend that referred them. They kind of generally already know the price. And it's like, nope. Then they just don't buy because you didn't do the sales process,
Yep. I every time I give a price over the phone, I kick myself. Almost every single time. There's probably been 3 times that I gave a price over the phone and it worked out for me.
Yeah.
Free. That is not enough. That is not enough times for me
Yeah.
to make that mistake.
Yeah.
Sarah
Exactly.
refers all the ones that refuse to book a consultation, that say they will not do a consultation without a price in hand. She hands me those and I call them and she's like, I don't know how you do it. And I go, just sit and listen to me. She's like, I don't know how you do it because every time I will book that consultation.
Yeah, because appointment setting is a real art form. A lot of
Yeah.
times people just think like, oh, sales all comes down to closing and getting people to say yes and pull the trigger on the program. Appointment setting is a real art form in and of itself,
Mhm.
taking somebody who doesn't know you and getting them to commit to giving you an hour of their time on a Saturday or a Thursday night or something
Mhm.
like that. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yep.
We have somebody on our team, Becca, who she just does all of the appointment setting for like inbound leads and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, we go through conversations and we talk about it, and it is amazing the little nuances that will scare somebody off. And yeah, so you just need to be very, very good at kind of reading people in the beginning and saying the things that they want to hear, while at the same time not going too far and giving away too much information or leading the conversation anywhere near the price and stuff like that. Because you're right, as soon as it goes there and as soon as you give them a price, you just, there's such a high likelihood that you lose that whole lead and opportunity for the sale. But the other thing I want to say too is the problem is sometimes people, they cling on to that false hope. So whereas for you, you're saying like 3 sales in the lifetime of doing this and making, or even just over the last year, if that's the case, of making offers over the phone, sometimes people make a sale over the phone and they're like, they get addicted to that and they're like, I did it once, I can do it again. And they just burn
Mhm.
through like 40 leads and make no sales. And they draw the conclusion that, oh, these leads are no good. And it's like, no, they're
Yep.
buying dog training. They're just not buying it from you. And the
From you.
reason that
Yeah.
they're not buying it from you is because they don't have that whole know, like, and trust factor built yet.
Yeah. And I will say the 3 that I did close, it wasn't that I couldn't push them off. I just knew
Yeah.
who they were as people.
Yeah.
They're kind of like one of my best friends. She has money. So she's just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is what you can do. How much does that cost
Yeah.
me? Can I bring them tomorrow? Can we meet today? Those are the
Yes.
ones that I know they're like, they just want to throw money at it and make it happen. They don't want to,
It,
they don't actually need to be sold. They've already sold it themselves. They've already decided.
that's exactly right. Yeah, and if don't get me wrong, if somebody comes along and they're like, I have a $5,000 check written out to Ohana Canine, I know the program that I want to do, how can I pay you? You don't need to be like, let's do a consultation, You could still do that if you wanted to, but it's like, you can take the money if it's sitting right there. That's obviously not the people that we're talking about, but for
Yeah.
everybody else, I think that just having the process of getting them in for a consult is, to us, we've studied it through every single scientific lens possible. It's so clear and far away the most successful way to sell. And it's just not even close, from all the clients we've worked with and done this with. So,
And I believe
yeah,
in
I mean,
in-person consultations. I have a struggle with the Zoom. I'm sure some dog trainers are really great with it, but there's
yeah.
a difference between showing up to somebody's home and making that in-person connection. I think there's a lot of that lacking in the world every day. So I feel like
Yeah.
it works best for me. Not for everybody necessarily, but for me, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I just, I want to hear from both of you guys on this, but Vanessa, there's something that I really have always admired about you and like your business, which is you are very open and upfront about the idea that like you are in a dog trainer heavy market in Florida, right? There's a lot of trainers around you, and there's a lot of people who
Yes.
sell like cheap training too. And so something that I love about you and your business is that like you just don't care and you sell high ticket programs anyway. You've actually had more success once you raised your prices because
Mhm.
people, like, it was like a differentiator for you, right? And it kind of like made you stand out a little bit more. So there's a
I
lot of
s-
people that can easily point to the fact that like I'm slow because there's a lot of other trainers in my market. So like talk to everybody about just like your mindset around that and how you kind of work through that, because I know a lot of people get very diminished by the idea of feeling like they're in a competitive market.
So I can throw a rock and probably hit 20 dog trainers. Like
Hmm.
literally, probably, I probably have 5 just in my neighborhood. So, but in this area, it's a big area, but it's also a small area. And it is flooded with dog trainers everywhere from all shapes, sizes, types, and all the things. I think one of the things for me is I am very different. I set myself apart with how I handle business just in general. I don't do fast and loose turn and burn programs. I don't believe in them. I don't do 1 2 weeker programs. And I get a lot of people that object to my time frame of my programs, my 4 6, heck, even my 8 week programs. People are like, would I talk to this other dog trainer and they said they can do this in 2? I understand that they think that they can do that in 2. I would question, and I do say this, and maybe it's not the right thing to say, but I do question their integrity in how they're training that dog. And I break down the science. It takes 2 weeks for a dog to just even settle in. How are you going to get this dog who is terrified of another person or who's biting somebody in just 2 weeks to not do that anymore? I'm going to question their integrity. So I set myself
Yeah.
apart with how long I'll keep a dog for. Also, I do all pickups and drop offs. Nobody's coming to my house. They are not being inconvenienced. I do a lot on the owner's timeline. When is it convenient for you for me to sit down and have this take home lesson? So I think putting almost like being the concierge, basically, what can I do for you to help you and your dog, and providing a more upscale environment for your dog for training. I don't have a facility. The dogs are not left unattended. I talk about how I have cameras on the dogs, and I'm able to tell them they're living in my home. They're getting to experience home life in my home. They're not just in a facility somewhere off property getting trained in a facility.
Yep.
I think that's a big one for a lot of people. And I actually make a point to say these things because, again, people don't know what they don't know. And a lot of dog trainers, that is their kind of setups. They at least around here it is. Or they want to do private lessons. And I tell people you will learn less in a private lesson for your reactive dog than you will in a board and train. And I also offer more private lessons. I also after the dog comes home. I just think I offer more and I set myself apart from everybody else. So I can charge more.
Yeah, well, I think it's a really good either motivating factor if you're listening to this or wake up call, depending on who you are and what you need to hear and stuff like that. That if your offer is not working, you may need to make it more competitive. And for you, like you offer a lot of different stuff to your clients and like the whole process, right? If you are someone who's like, I just do a board and train and you drop your dog off and you get a go home lesson and then like, yeah, you can text us for support if you ever have questions and we'll like, post a picture on social media every once in a while, your dog when it's here. Like that is not as compelling of an offer. That's an obvious like oversimplification. I know most people who are listening to this are not doing something like that. But my point is like if you are doing anything similar to that, and there's somebody in your market who is doing board and train lessons to kind of like help people get like set up, or they're in constant communication throughout the board and train and they get much more support afterwards, and there's different things that they're invited to, maybe a group class or something like that, or they get training videos. And by the way, the trainer really took the time to come out and meet with me, and I didn't feel like I was being sold something. I felt like they were just leading me to help make the right decision for me and my dog. And they came to my house versus just giving me 10 minutes of a phone call or something like that. All of that stuff again just kind of comes back to the offer, and your offer is what's going to allow you to charge way more money and be way more profitable in your business.
I also offer, and this may sound ridiculous, but I have some clients that are extra needy and need to see their dog. And they get really like they're worried about the time that they're going to be away from their dog. So I offer coffee with your dog in the morning. So I will
Wait a second. That's awesome. So do you invite them to your place and they can come over and see their dog,
No,
or what do you do?
FaceTime. It's a FaceTime coffee
Okay.
with your dog.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
I
Yeah.
will FaceTime clients while I'm taking the dogs out to go potty and break, and we'll get their coffee. Like I will schedule them. Like if you want to have coffee with your dog in the morning, you just let me know. And I don't charge extra for it. I'm drinking coffee, I'm breaking the dogs. Let's kill two birds,
Yeah.
one stone, makes you feel better. You can see your
Yeah.
dog playing, having fun, because people think their dogs are like the going off to boot camp and they're going to be sad. I always tell people, imagine as a kid you got to go to camp, and you had fun. That's how I explain explain that to people. These dogs come and they have fun. They're at camp. They don't have time to miss you. Like
Yeah.
I have said that, but I don't say that. But yeah, they're
No,
too
love
busy
that.
having fun.
That's a great
Yeah.
idea.
So
Yeah, I mean, it seems silly,
coffee
but
with your
then when
dog.
you really break it down, it's like people want to see their dog. They want to make sure they're happy, you know? But we started this conversation off talking about very specifically how the location that you're in right now, there's a lot of people that work government jobs, whether just general government jobs or in the military, and how they are, dealing with this government shutdown and, either not getting paid or may not get paid depending on like the role they're in, and that maybe only a couple more weeks of payment or something like that. So you were just kind of saying before, the biggest remedy that you found to stuff like that is just making it super digestible when it comes to payment plans. But I think all of this other stuff that you're talking about too, even in economic downturns or downturns, people still buy stuff. And I
Mhm.
always think about some of the most profitable businesses of all time were started during recessions and depressions. And so just because your local economy may be suffering or there's something going on economically or politically, that doesn't mean that you just like pull the emergency brake and just throw your hands up and say like, oh, nothing works anymore. So, how do you kind of handle that from a mindset perspective and just like work through all that?
So I think also if we consider and we think about like COVID and how people
Hmm.
were stuck at home and a lot of people couldn't go to their jobs and things like that. So they had dogs. And so I think people are also taking this time during this government shutdown to realize that their dog has more challenges or issues than they realize because they're gone all day to work. So they're reaching out to dog trainers. They're reaching out to figure out what we can do to help our dogs. I'm getting a 9-year-old dog coming in. They're one of my clients that was concerned about government shutdown. They're pregnant. They're on a timeline. The dog doesn't like kids. So there's a lot of factors there. I worked out a deal with them. I told them about PayPal. They looked at different options and we're spreading out their payments a little bit more because they understand this needs to happen and they didn't realize just how bad the dog is around kids until the government shutdown. So they need it. They're seeing it more so than probably before because they are home. And so I think we also you want to have a better relationship and a better time home with your dog. Let's get your dogs in a good place. And if board and trains are too expensive, then you branch out and you do private trainings. I don't love private options. Like I'm not a private dog trainer. However, if I feel like a dog can do well and it works for me as well, I'm offering private lessons for dogs that I would normally only take as a board and train to help offset the cost.
Percent. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just to kind of close out this conversation, one last topic here. I think that when it comes to your sales process and handling the difficulty of that objection of like, oh man, it's really tough right now. Like my husband or my wife isn't getting paid currently. I think a lot of times people shy away from having that conversation because it's kind of awkward and you're like, I don't want to hear that you don't have money. Like, oh no. But I think like leaning directly into it and just talking with them and being like, oh man, like tell me about what's going on. Like tell me about how long you haven't been getting paid for. What do you do for work? And being able to really have a good handle on it and then be able to have through an empathetic tone talk to them about like, I'm sorry that's happening to you guys. I know that this is something that's very common right now. We have a lot of people that are dealing with this and we have creative ways to help them get started. So we could definitely help you guys as well. And so you can kind of
I
spin
like that.
that into, yeah, you can spin that into like, hey, you're not the first person who's dealing with this. And we've helped other people still find a way to do it. So, like, let's talk about how we can help you with that as well. And psychologically, it just kind of like implants that idea that's like, hey, this isn't like a hard stop. Like, this is just an equation that needs to be figured out. It's just a puzzle. We just need the last missing puzzle piece and stuff like that. So, Angel, with that being said, like, what are your thoughts on that? And do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, everything that you just said is a prime example on why getting in front of people to build a connection is so, so
Mhm.
important. Because, I mean, with all of like the government shutdown and financial issues aside, it's very important to make people feel like they're not alone with their dog's issues. Because a lot of time people do feel like that. Like, I have the worst dog ever. And I mean, I've met people like that, and I'm like, your dog is really not that bad. I've met so much worse. But
Yep.
like, you want to make sure that they don't feel alone. And then just
Mhm.
like you would, talk to a friend or talk to someone that you really care about who's going through a hard time or who is stressed out or something, and you have that conversation with them and you're like, "Hey, like we can get through this. We'll work something out." Like that's how you're going to talk to them. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you're not the first person to have financial issues and you're not going to be the last, but we'll figure something out. I know that you need the help and we'll get through this. So that's why it's so important to have that connection with someone. And aside from asking all the questions about their dog and what they're dealing with and everything like that, like ask more, learn about them, learn about their family and their lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. So you're kind of like given a reason to get a little further with them and be more empathetic without, feeling weird or awkward about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Vanessa,
I
anything you want to
I
add to that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, my everybody asks me my dog training company name, like, everybody's like, "Are you Hawaiian?" I was like, "No, I started the business because family, because Ohana means family, and that's how I wanted my clients, to feel like family. So I treat them more that way. I wanna be invested in your dog's life, in your life, and yes, it started as service dogs, and it started, with my kid having a family outside of his immediate family, but it ultimately has become more because I look at all these dogs that come in. I'm really good friends. I get, messages all the time, random from clients that I've had for years telling me how great their dog is doing, or I check in with them. I'm getting dogs for Christmas because they feel so comfortable because we are like family. We take care of your
Yeah.
animals like you would. And I
Yeah.
agree, getting that like relationship is super important, and stop looking
Mhm.
at them as dollar signs. If you're in this industry for dollars only, then you're in it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, and you're going to fizzle
I
out
mean,
very
yes,
quickly.
yeah,
Yeah.
we want to
Yeah,
make
we're all
money, of
trying to make you're all
course.
trying to make
Yeah.
money, but like it shouldn't I've met people and like when I know it's going to be a really bad relationship and I really just genuinely do not take people on like this as clients anymore. Whenever they start, the first thing they mention to me is just like trying to reverse engineer like the quickest way to get to like 50K a month and they're like just getting started as a dog trainer. I'm like, "Oh, you're like thinking this is a get rich quick type of thing." It's not, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I
and it's
also
a
just want to touch on
lifestyle.
that real quick. Yeah. I was just going to say real quick. There's a big difference between saying that, like, oh, we treat people like family and actually treating people like family. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's a
Hmm.
really nice platitude to say, like, oh, we're a family around here. We treat people like family. And then it's like someone comes along and they're falling on hard times and you're just like, sorry, $5,000 or you can't get started. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
Like, that's like what family member would you treat that way? You know? How are you raised? You know?
Yeah. I think treating people like human beings. But you're right. Like, I can say, "Oh, I treat you like family," and then, but you owe me $50,000. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how that works. But yeah,
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think I think treating people like human beings and not dollar signs makes a difference. I really do.
Yeah, people feel that for sure.